Florida signed up as part of PARC, and other states have signed up with Smarter Balance. What is their role in this process?
Excellent question, and I'm glad you asked that. I'm going to try to repeat it, but I'll probably be paraphrasing. What about PARC? And Florida is part of PARC, and there's also Smarter Balanced, and what went into that decision and what's our role? Am I getting that about right?
What's their role?
What's PARC's role? Okay. I didn't go into that because that could be 30 minutes in and of itself, but I'll do it in an abbreviated way. PARC is, I'm not going to think what it stands for, but it's one of the assessments to assess Common Core, and there are roughly 22 states that signed up to participate as part of PARC. Florida signed up as a fiscal agent for PARC, so we have the money flow through us. We pay. Achieve is the organization that is coordinating the effort of the assessment itself. It is, you can Google PARCC, and I suggest you do that because there are sample items. The example that I used about the transportation and the buses, that's one that came from that website. So you can see what kind of questions would be asked on that assessment. States will choose what assessment they will provide, and it is to be implemented in 14-15. Smarter Balanced is another one. It's very similar, measures much the same. It has a component of oh gosh, somebody help me in this room, but it is adaptive, so that if a student gets too many of the questions wrong, it adjusts to easier questions. And the scoring is adjusted as part of, it's not like if a student gets X number right, but they were all easy questions, they would get the same score as someone who answered the same number correct, but were much harder. And so those are the two. We will be moving forward on making a decision of which direction we're going to go, and we actually will be making a decision of, the commissioner calls it Plan B, in case PARC is not ready. And you had another part of it, or a clarification on part of what I said.
I just want to understand, so a state signed up for PARC, they're not going to take the same test as a state signed up for Smarter Balance?
That's right. The question is, if they sign up for PARC, they're not going to take the same assessment as the state that signed up for Smarter Balanced, and that is correct. But states are not locked into one or the other. They can move. They can do PARC one year, and if they didn't like that, they could move to Smarter Balanced. Probably not a real wise decision to jump, because you're not going to get good comparisons from year to year. If I may, is outside of the realm of your question, but it does bring this on. You know, Florida has done a lot in education reform. I mentioned it earlier. Jeb Bush did some very good work in the state of Florida. I could tell you a long story about the school that I was principal of and where we maneuvered through that reform process. But what I would tell you is that I think it's really important that we focus on how our students are performing every time we raise the bar. And that's happened in Florida an awful lot. And you've seen Florida move the needle up. And the result of that is that our students do better. It's a benefit to our students is really what happens as a result of that. I don't know if you want to help me choose. Right here?
You don't.
Great.
Ma'am, I understand that 45 states have volunteered to sign up for this. I would ask you, is there a federal dollar trail that comes to Florida? And the second part of my question is, fearing the encroachment of the federal government, because I've never seen a program that gets smaller, what is the exit strategy if in fact it grows past English and science?
Yeah, really good question. All right.
Great question. That's good.
Bring me back on track if I forget. First part of the question again?
Money trail from the federal
money
government.
trail. There is a money trail. The money trail has nothing to do with the standards. It follows the PARC, the assessment. So there were federal dollars that went for PARC, federal dollars that went for Smarter Balanced. The state government is done. I've sat in on those meetings. in Washington, D.C. They're done with it. They have nothing to do with the content. They have nothing to do with the development. All they want to know is, we're providing the money, how far along are you? Are you going to meet the deadline? And the far-reaching effect, I would suggest to you that it is incumbent upon all of us. I will never run for office. I don't mean this to sound like a stump speech, but it is incumbent upon all of us to ensure that the grasp is not too far-reaching. And we have to be vigilant to that.
So there is no escape plan?
Escape plan. I knew there was another part. Yes, absolutely, there's an escape plan. So I mentioned Plan B. Commissioner Tony Bennett is working toward a Plan B. Every state can choose to do what they want about assessment. We have a moral and legal obligation to assess our students on what they're taught. And so if we choose to leave Park, or if we were part of Smarter Balanced and chose to exit Smarter Balanced, we can do that.
Can we exit the whole program, is what I'm saying?
Yes.
There's the, the Pavlovian response to the federal dollars.
Absolutely.
At what point, when all of a sudden curriculum is changing and the nose is now the whole camel inside the tent, is there an escape clause? Is there a way out of this? Or do bureaucrats pant over federal dollars and we're in this?
I can't tell you that if Florida chose to exit Park, that the federal government would say, you're done. I don't know what they could possibly tell us. We are still our own state to make our own decisions about, and that's the responsibility of the State Board of Education, and they take that responsibility seriously and have thoroughly reviewed the standards before they made any kinds of decisions as to whether or not this was something we wanted to sign on to. That decision had nothing to do with dollars. I really am uncomfortable being the one to decide who should call on. Yeah, absolutely. Can you do them one at a time, or I'll have trouble remembering?
So the word that we have is that this is basically a result of the stimulus money that was linked to Race to the Top. And states were forced to take Race to the Top and they took stimulus money for their education. Let me just finish. And that Race to the Top morphed into Common Core. So I'll just leave it at that, and then I'll come back after you respond to that.
So I'm going to do my best on that part. I was in the Department of Education when stimulus happened, and then Race to the Top was on the horizon, and Florida was about to apply. I then went to St. Johns County, had nothing to do with Race to the Top, trust me, but I left and went to St. Johns County, and so I watched it from a side, and then came back, and we already had Race to the Top. What I can tell you is that, yes, there are some federal dollars that are used for Common Core, but that was our choice. And it really was after I got back here, and I looked around and said, what are we doing to prepare our teachers to teach the Common Core? And so we took Race to the Top dollars in order to train our teachers. There's a summer institute going on right now today and tomorrow in Santa Rosa County. We used those dollars. It was our choice. It was not what the federal government told us we must do. The only federal dollars that were attached to anything remotely to do with Common Core was providing the money for the development of the assessment that would accompany.
Okay, thank you for the response. Then kind of the follow-on to that is, and again, this is the information that we're being told, which is contrary to what, not really necessarily contrary, but
Correct.
Your CCSSO,
Right.
which is a lobbying group. Don't respond, let me just go through it. And let me see, liberal academia, there were no conservatives. Again, this is what we're being told. Teachers unions, members of the Obama administration, a progressive group, which you mentioned, named Achieve, and college boards. So the money, the race to the top money, that not necessarily came to the state, but race to the top grants, federal grants were used. This is the way that we understand this. Federal grants were used to fund that group in order to reduce the Common Core state standards.
I can't really speak to the National Governors Association. I can speak to CCSSO. For a brief time, I sat as the interim commissioner of education, so I was part of CCSSO, and I've had some loose involvement with them in my role as chancellor. That really is a group of chiefs that come together, and they actually do make policy decisions as a group of state chiefs. And that was where this initiated from. That part I know absolutely, positively is the case because I was there to witness that part. With regard to Achieve, I forget the word that you used to progressive. Progressive can be positive or not so positive, but I would suggest to you that Achieve has done some work very similar to what Governor Bush has done in pushing the needle, in looking for raising standards and making them higher, and looking at what can we do in order for our students to achieve higher. So progressive from that standpoint. As far as liberal educators, I can tell you very quite honestly, the Florida Teachers Union, FEA, has in fact supported Common Core. I can't tell you whether or not they've done that on a national level, but I do know that they have supported Common Core. Not in any financial way. They have felt like this is what teachers went into education to do.
And I apologize, I may have directed the question a little bit improperly. Really, the question is, did federal money fund the development of Common Core? That's the understanding that we have. That was really the question.
I recently heard discussion at CCSSO by David Coleman, who really was instrumental in a lot of the ELA writing, and that was initiated from within CCSSO. If there were federal dollars, I honestly have no knowledge of that. Again, that was when I was sitting out in the district, but my follow-up conversation sitting in CCSSO meetings with David Coleman there, that was an initiative through CCSSO.
And if I might, let me just take the last part of this, because I think these are probably, I mean, do you all want me to do this?
Yes.
Yes.
So the next thing, and I think this is really critically important, is you've said that these are Common Core state standards, but they're not a curriculum. But that's kind of disingenuous, because the curriculum is developed based on the standards. And not only that, you say Florida, the Hillsborough County can pick whatever curriculum they want. The state dictates that there are 3 books, or however many it is, in each course category, and the local school district can pick up to 50% of the curriculum out of that, and then 50% outside of that. But the point is, the curriculum is going to be developed based on the Common Core state standards, and one of the biggest players in this is Pearson, who's one of the biggest textbook manufacturers. So to think that we're not going to see Pearson really making a lot of money on this and also dictating what the curriculum is, doesn't, to me, pass itself out.
Yeah, excellent point. The curriculum has to be based on the standards, so that really is, it's a nuanced difference, but there is a difference. So let me say that part again, and then I'll follow up. The standards are what, and that's what the State Board of Education adopted. The curriculum is how, and those are local decisions. So one thing I would suggest to you, we put forward, the State Board of Education very actively put forth legislation to completely remove any of the requirements of dollars spent on instructional materials so that 100% could be the local decision. And it didn't make it through the legislative session. It got pretty far, got up to the last week, but it did not make it through the legislative session. There is a change to the instructional materials, and we do think that there's a way that if districts work together with other districts, they very possibly could have 100% flexibility. And I do think that's key. I think that's very important. And yes, there is a state-adopted list, and you're right. I would suggest to you that vendors benefit tremendously from that list. I would also suggest to you that I believe that, without a doubt, social studies and probably ELA and some of the sciences could be taught without a text. I believe, and I will tell you, I believe that's what Common Core supports, is that it's authentic text. So, as my daughter said to me one day when she was given something in her district to teach, she said, hold on, I thought Common Core, I was supposed to go out and look for it. And that's true. That's true. What's the best way for me as the instructor to teach this standard? Even if the district has decided the curriculum from the standpoint of, we're going to have, by this date, we're going to at least have gotten through this much.